Happy to be up here. Thank you, Kristen. We did a whole Frankenstein of the biography at the last minute because it was out of date. I had a lot of changes this last year. Thank you for having me. I want to first thank the beautiful festival organizers and the audience and the participation in this town and this place. You really have something special here. I've had the privilege of attending various festivals lately, and this is really amazing how warm and friendly and inviting everything is. Exceptional. I want to also first acknowledge before I begin that we are on Sagin, traditional territory, and I want to give name to those beautiful keepers of this place. I am from Winnipeg, which is Métis territory. I am Métis, of Métis descent. I am a member of the Métis Nation. I also come from the place that is signed under Treaty 1 by the Anishinaabe people. I say this because that is traditionally how we introduce ourselves as Indigenous people. We acknowledge our host, and then we talk about our own nation. I will read later from North End Love Songs, which will tell you all about my beautiful, complicated relationship with my home. Ooh, but first I thought, since we mentioned XXX Indian, and since there's been some beautiful, sexy poetry shared this weekend, I thought I would share my own version. And keep in mind, I come from Roman Catholic on one side and Mennonite on the other. So there's a lot of repression that is under here. I always say that's why they chose me to edit XXX Indian, because I was the one that would be blushing the most, and I would keep everything in check. It is called Love and Lust, and I will say, mine are about love, well, kind of. It's about that in-between love and lust place. I actually had 3 poems in the book, all about different boyfriends, none of which lasted, but they were good poems, which is the only thing that matters. And also my challenge for myself, because I always give myself nice complicated challenges because I didn't want to write about sex because Mennonite, Roman Catholic. My mommy, might read it. So instead, I wrote about metaphors around this, and around love, and around lust. So one was about music, one was about drinking, and one was about bungee jumping. This is for a boyfriend I had who had gone bungee jumping, and as a person deathly afraid of heights, I thought that was the most crazy-ass thing you could ever do. And he said, oh, you can come with me. We can go in tandem, which is when one person is kind of piggybacking on the other person, and we can go, and this was gonna be our thing. And then I said, nah, I don't really like you. So we didn't go. But, before that, I wrote a poem. Or it might have been after that, when the idealism sets in, like, oh, he was really a nice guy, I should call him. So this is called In Tandem. Strapped together, and at that edge, I look up to the overcast sky for sudden inspiration, but I don't get any. Acrophobics should never bungee jump, just like cynics should never fall in love. I know that already. I know that if I wasn't belted in so tight, I would run. If this man wasn't holding on so hard, I would take off. I would flee so fast down the leafy side of the mountain, back there where the air isn't so sharp and you can't hear the river. But I am so firmly pressed against him. The belt so tight across my chest constricts my breath, hooks me onto him. I am so close. I am so close, I can't even look into his eyes, only breathe in gasps over his shoulder, my legs wrapped all the way around him. His legs flex to keep me up. And I try to will myself lighter, lighter, so light he will not have to bear the weight of me, so light I can fly with him through this cutting mountain air and just be done with it. But I fight And the smoldering panic is so hot it burns my skin to the touch. Still, his hands clench my thighs. So strong, I almost believe he won't let me go. I almost believe I couldn't fall out if I wanted to, couldn't stop if I tried. Ready is all he asks. His hot breath leaning back into my cheek. I can only squeeze my arms around his thick shoulders in reply. I can only see the top lip of the gaping canyon, but hear the baritone roar of the river far below. I can only see white rock and pale moss in a watery blur before I close my eyes and just hang on. I haven't read that one in a long time. And when my daughters ask, I say, it's about bungee jumping. God, what are you thinking about? Okay, I'm going to read North End Love Songs. This is my little book, and I wrote this book about where I was from, the North End of Winnipeg. Does anyone know anything? Heard about the North End of Winnipeg? Yeah, a little bit of waves. It's kind of a notorious place. No, it's a beautiful place. Similar to Vancouver's East Side, it's quite an impoverished neighborhood. We actually have the two most impoverished postal codes in the country. I think we have number 1 and number 3, and East Van has number 2. You know, we compete for that wonderful title. And it is a place that is quite special. Originally, it was built for Eastern European immigrants that came in around the turn of the century, and the houses were built on very narrow lots. And the narrow lots was actually by design, because back then you could only vote if you owned a property that was about 2 feet wider. So no one got to vote. And then as our city progressed and spread out, the Eastern European, well, I shouldn't say that. Many people have stayed, many people did leave. And during the 60s, when the Indigenous people were allowed to leave their First Nation communities for the first time, many of them emigrated to Winnipeg, and many to the North End. Right now, we sit somewhere between a 70 to 77% Indigenous population, and that's Cree, Anishinaabe, and Métis primarily. Also some Dakota and those crazy Sioux. Inuit, they're crazy. So I grew up with this. I grew up in a very Indigenous place. I grew up in a very impoverished place, but very rich culturally. And that's what I wanted to show in my first book. My friend Duncan McCurdy is a poet, told me that my first book was supposed to be about where I was from. Just like I traditionally introduce myself, I should do that with a book. So I wrote these poems. So the first section of the book, I talk a lot about birds, because when I get a metaphor, I hold on to it. It keeps me warm. And then I proceed to beat it with a stick until everyone's bored. So this is my bird poems, and they're short. So please don't feel the need to clap in between, because they kind of go together in a suite, and they're short. I mean, your poor hands will get so tired. So of course, bird poems have to start somewhere. They start with an egg. Egg. She is waiting. She is a swollen belly housed in soft bones, waiting. Wrapped in glowing skin, waiting. Like a child in June, waiting. An infant, an egg, waiting for just the perfect moment to crack. Blackbird. A baby's cry rises up into the infinite night, unanswered. Below her, voices dissolve into desperate bass, cheap rhythms. Below, words are lost to the din. But from this distance, her cry is clear, It resonates into the low clouds, finds its pitch against the stars already. She is strong already. She is a cappella. Blue jay. Poised for flight, one small foot on the curb like a sprinter, this girl with such rough skin, the color of concrete in the rain, this girl is ready to fly. Her eyes pierce the wind, pulls her hair back like a mother's hand making a ponytail. She looks for a break, falls into a clumsy run, dodges cars with more luck than precision, and lands triumphant on the other side, where she pushes the open sides of her windbreaker together and falls behind a thin line of orange patrols just leaving their posts, and not far off, a school bell rings. Go. This poem is like a whole breath, so I have to get the breath. It always sounds very deep when poets breathe, right? We're so deep. Go. One evening her eyes will gaze up into the pink of a darkening sky, and she will raise her arms like a lark to the wind while the trees wave her on, and she will just let go. I have to set this one up. This is my powwow, my Jingle Dress Dancer poem. I have to talk about Jingle Dress because Jingle Dress is my favorite dance. It's a powwow dance. Powwow is quite popular, right? We all know what powwow is, right? Okay. The Jingle Dress is, the regalia is quite simple compared to many regalia for powwow. That is very extravagant. But the Jingle Dress is usually just a long straight dress, usually about mid-calf, always covering the knee. And it's usually red, sometimes it's other colors, but the idea of the jingle dress is little cones or coins or some sort of bells are kind of woven into it, so that whenever the dancer dances, she jingles. Hence the name, go figure, right? But the story behind the jingle dress is that it is danced by young women, or girls even, and, well, past menstrual cycle kind of girls. And the idea is that as she is dancing, she is healing. So she is healing her elders, she is healing her people, she is healing her community. And I love this idea of the young women being the ones that are doing the healing. So of course I made her into a bird because I was obsessed with birds. Red bird. She dances in long red cloth with gold rings sewn into lines across her body. She curves a round circle way, jingling gently to the drum. Her hair bouncing black feathers, her dress wide red wings, her lithe feet so light no one would be surprised if she really did take flight. So I'll deviate from that and I'll read Happy Girls. See, I didn't always write about birds. I switched to other metaphors. But I really wanted to talk about girls and women. I had one, actually, university student, when I read my book, ask me, he was a fairly traditional man, older man, taking his English degree. And he said, what is your problem with men? And I said, oh, we don't have time for that conversation. I gotta read some poems. I have no problem with men. I wanted to talk about girls and women, and I felt that that was the story that I needed to share, and I felt that was the story that needed to be shared. I think and even in Indigenous literature, in many literatures, I don't always hear these voices. Indigenous girls and women are needing to come up and to the microphone. So I wanted to speak to them. So that's why I I wrote about girls and women. I still haven't written about men, and so he's really not going to like anything I write ever. But yeah, that's okay. So this is I'm going to read the poem and then I'll show you the funny thing. So this is called Happy Girls. Two drunk girls on a bridge. Their long hair cuts the wind under a winter sky ready to burst. Two drunk girls pause in 1 minute of a cruel white night. One girl burrows into her thin jacket and emerges with a fully lit smoke. The other leans her belly into the cold cement rail and reaches over the river for that first flake of snow. In another class, a guy wanted me to read that poem, and he said, did you mean, he's like, it's so brilliant because you made it into a bridge. And I said, what? And he said, look, it's a bridge. And I said, I'm brilliant. Wow. I like that. Wow. Fascinating. Totally by fluke. My poems are very thin, but they don't do anything other than fall off the lines. So the other metaphor I took and beat with a stick until we were all tired of it was trees. Winnipeg, very much like Saskatoon actually, and Regina, have amazing elm trees. We actually boast the biggest collection, which is weird because it's all throughout our city, of American elms this side of Central Park. Saskatoon thinks they have the title, but we do. Yeah. But it's beautiful because even whenever you fly over Winnipeg, and many people, don't stop, they just fly over, and that's okay. Many of the older neighborhoods, the West End, the North End, the central downtown areas, the trees are so high they go over the houses. So the whole place in the middle of summer looks like a gigantic park. And they are beautiful, and they are non-indigenous to Manitoba. I found this is like Santa Claus is not real kind of thing to me, because I don't know what I believed, but I grew up in this place where there was elm trees all over the place, and it was like a forest in some places. They were so thick and tangly, and I just thought maybe that the houses were built into it or something. I don't know, even though one was perfectly in front of every house, really uniformly. But they're not indigenous to Manitoba because Manitoba was once the bottom of a big lake. And, it's prairie, trees, prairie, not so much. They're actually were chosen to be the American elms to look exactly like Central Park. Central Park, which also is a man-made or female-constructed, well, there were men at that time, forest. It was once a field full of wild grass that was plowed, and then the trees were planted, and all God is dead. And but the only elms that are indigenous to Manitoba are the ones that grow along the river. And these are very different elms, sometimes called Canadian elms and sometimes just called American elms. Part 2, I don't know. But they're slightly different and they grow different because the ones along the street are super straight and tall. The ones along the river are different. So as my poet in me said, look at this, we have non-indigenous trees and indigenous trees living together. Ha ha. And then I proceeded to beat the metaphor with a stick. So this is family. Elms around us like aunties, uncles, cousins, all different, but with the same skin. The tall one with thinning foliage sticking straight up, branches scratching at the sky. The wide one split in two halfway up, looks like scissors are two legs bent and kicking. The gnarled one with warts all over its face. The one with the swirled branch curved out over Cathedral Avenue, looped like brown hair around a finger. But her favorites are the ones by the river. They spread low and stay close to the earth. Those ones she can climb into, lean against the strong, dark bark and rest her small body within their rounded arms. Their sharp leaves reach out over the river, and she watches how the waves fold into and out of each other, like family. And this is switching the metaphor of the trees a little bit. I was reading Susanna Moody. We mentioned it yesterday. Susan Moody has not been mentioned so much at poetry readings in the last 50 years. But I remember reading this because I had to for school, and just really reacting to this settler idea of, killing off the Indians and killing off the trees and just really plowing the way through. This idea of just plowing the way through. So I thought of our trees, our precious trees that we've grown to love in Winnipeg. We love them, we hug them, we ban them every year to prevent all the diseases that happen for them. And because of that, many of them die. And it's tragic to watch them die, to watch those big trees come down. So I wrote a poem about that. And kind of switched up the metaphor idea. Green Disease, which is also a title of a Pearl Jam song. I don't know. Not everyone gets that. It matters nothing, but it makes me go, hee hee, I'm cool. She watches the city cut down trees, bright orange X, a kill mark spray painted across the bark. They come in an oversized white truck, stretch out a long metal arm with a large bucket at the end. A man gets out and rises up off the street like an elevator or a hot air balloon. With a loud buzzing saw, he starts at the top, cuts the leafy branches, sways gently back and forth, as if carving sculpture or trimming hair. Branches fall lightly to the earth where other men absent-mindedly gather them into a pile. She watches. Until the tree looks nothing like itself, it is naked, bald, amputated. The bucket lowers slightly, the trunk stabbed. The man cuts a short, thick piece until it loosens, falls heavy. Cut after cut until the tree is barely taller than the grass and the pieces sit around the stump like stones. When the men leave, she studies each piece that was the tree and tries to count the yellow rings that were once inside, but each blonde circle only blurs into the next. Trying to decide what I want to read next. How am I doing for time? I have no concept of time. 5 minutes? Okay. Okay. I'm going to read 3 more. I'm going to read Wildflowers because it's my snarky poem. I like to be snarky. This is another metaphor. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's really evident. Wildflowers. It's the wildflowers she really feels sorry for. They gotta watch their backs. Nobody wants them around. People spread poisons to kill them off, call them weeds. She thinks it's a shame because if you let them just grow, they're really quite beautiful. Flowering pink and butter yellow can fill a dark space with a splendid green if you let them. But if they flower, they will seed. If you let them, they'll take over. They'll choke out all those poppies and marigolds, roses and daffodils. No planted flower stands a chance against a pack of weeds. So they get yanked. Roots burned, concrete's thrown over them. Still they sprout all over the place. Push through cracks in the sidewalk, congregate on otherwise respectable lawns. Darn squatters, she thinks. They're the ones who really gotta watch their backs. Okay. Haha. This is a new poem. It's so brand new, I was writing it today. And I'm reading it just because it makes me really nervous to read brand new poems, and it's exciting. Haha. I don't even know if it's ready yet. But I feel like, it's ready to give voice to whether or not it's finished. And I'm reading this because this weekend has been wonderful and relaxing. I'm reading this because this weekend has had a full moon. Partly inspired by Mary's lovely guessing poems, because I was, looking at writing a poem without using the word of what I'm describing. Though it's really obvious what it is, because I just told you, full moon. Totally giving it away, because, I've never read it before, so I don't know if it's evident. And yeah, I've just been thinking about different things. It's called Grandmother. I'm thinking about my grandmother while I'm reading this, reading this. Let's see. Grandmother. Old, gray, grated with age like cheese pushed through holes. She watches over and lights up for us, reflects our grandfather, but sings her own song. Quiet, constant, as solid as our Earth Mother, she gave that to her, and makes waves in her own way. We can always feel her and know she is there, even when everything is dark. But we're wrong. She isn't the one who changes. We are the ones who keep moving away. I like that. It worked. Yay, it worked. So this is another new one. And we're going up to Batoche now. We were in Winnipeg. We were hanging out in the night sky. We were bungee jumping in the mountains. So we're going to go back to Batoche, which is about an hour north of Saskatoon. So we're really going where Charles took us. I got the pleasure of going to Batoche this last year, and it made me very sad. Batoche was the place where it was the last stand of the Northwest Resistance. We were not part of Canada at that time, so it was a resistance, not a rebellion. And there's a graveyard there, and it felt like a very sad place to me, even though it was during Batoche days and everyone was dressed up and, going, hey! And I was like, I just wanted to be sullen, and so I went off to the graveyard and wrote poetry, just like I did when I was 16. So this is Bury Me at Batoche. Bury me at Batoche, where their old shacks still stand. Paint peels from the weathered wood, but inside they smell like sweetgrass, sound like whispers. Bury me behind them, in the graveyard where the stones hinge the clouds in the South Saskatchewan River, where the wooden crosses tilt to the sun and the wind answers in a language I only know in my bones, but every name is family and I can still hear them. They crowd around the fiddle, they dance gentle in the grass. Bury me there. Past the gift shop and the walkway where quotations decorate pixelated photos of dead men and the story is shown at the top of every hour. The same film used for 2 languages, overdubbed both ways, so both look like they're not coming out of those mouths right. Bury me in the shadow of the church with its cornflower window. Bury me there, 'cause that's where Grandmère will be. She will light the candles for those who went before us, but I'll just stay out here and wait. Where I can still see them, down in the coulees, their gun barrels pointed east. rough men in dirty shirts whose sleeves billow like worn flags. The rifle iron scrapes and the red coats shout on the horizon. Bury me here where everyone lost and everything changed, behind the new cast iron fence that shines welcome to the graveyard along the river. The marble pillar notes a history in Cree first, before French, before English. Put me in the back, where most headstones are hand-carved, fallen over but propped back up, where the water rumbles like hunger and those birch leaves still dance in the sun.